15th, 2023 Joliet Township High School Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yeah, here.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Here.
Dr. Huntington? Mr. Coffey?
Here.
Mrs. Stiff?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Here.
May we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On behalf of the Board of Education, we would like to welcome all of our visitors that are in person and that are viewing us via live stream. Welcome. Are there any public comments?
No, ma'am, not for agenda items.
May I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
We'll now have recognition and awards.
Ask Mrs. Parker and Mr. Hallahan to join me at the podium. Tonight, we recognize a group of classroom teachers over the last 3 or 4 years have proven to demonstrate a level of excellence and that serves our students. Just to give everybody an understanding, our evaluation process is very rigorous. They have numerous evaluations, numerous conferences with their supervisors. We support them through our new teacher orientation program, which is 4 years, with the support of our instructional coaches. And I just want to say thank you, congratulations. We're very proud of you, and I look forward to you, like, as you become tenured in this district, you are tenured in this district, that you continue to see JTHS as your family. And I just want to say thank you to you for being here, because many of you are coaches. So just seeing a few of you, you went from our Institute Day today, which we ended at 3, to coaching, then here, and I'm sure, hopefully you had dinner as well. So we'll start off with recognitions from the Central Campus. Again, these staff members have proven excellence over the last 3 or 4 years, and we want to recognize them tonight. Our first recognition is Lindsay Barnes from the Central Campus. And just stay up here. You're gonna start lining up. I don't think I saw Joe here. Joe's not here. We can call both family members up. So David Collins and Jocelyn Collins. So Mr. and Mrs. Collins. It's so wonderful to have a family here. Makes it easy on the schedule, right? Sometimes, probably. Congratulations so much. Congratulations. Thank you. I hope I didn't forget. Patrick Higgins. Dan Martinez. Congratulations. You're going to have to stand next to Lindsay. It's the role. Gary McClellan. There's a few others from Central. They were unable to come, but I just want to recognize them. So Rocio Flores, Jamie Gotland, Vivian Helwich. Renee Batch-Haker. Antoinette Bernard. Chelsea Martinez. Ben Derurling. Congratulations. Tiffany Alexander. Michael Brower. Andrea Lopez. Susie Montano. And then a few others that couldn't be here. Janine Khatib, and Elizabeth Cavelli, and Ryan Hager. Okay. 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 Sure. Bless you.
Is that it? So we want to thank you all for your dedication, your expertise, and your excellence. So thank you for reaching tenureship. And we're going to take about a couple of minutes to come out and congratulate you. Thank you. Now we'll have superintendent reports.
Thank you. There's no correspondence or legislative report, so we'll move straight to our tentative budget presentation by Dr. Hampton.
The clicker, the clicker.
Good evening to everyone. I'm to present the 23-24 school year tentative budget. So each year, we must prepare a budget to be approved by the Board of Education. Presentation occurs in August, must be published to the community for 30 days with a final passage in September. So I want to go over some background information in terms of how the budget was created. A lot of the information you're going to hear, you've heard it before. It's just a culmination of information that has been presented to the board from July 1 of last year through June 30 of this year here, this past year. So we'll start with how this budget is created. So when we start to talk about revenues, we're talking about the CPI. So the CPI increase is 5%. We've had that discussion last November and December when we passed the levy. So we're now having that discussion in terms of how this budget is being presented. New construction for this year is $113 million. Previous new construction was $76 million. The equalized assessed value was roughly $3.4 million. There was an increase of about 9.63%, which increased our equalized assessed value to over $3.7 billion. Now, that speaks to just the growth that's happening in the area, and that speaks to the viability of the area economically, right? So most areas are not seeing that type of growth when it comes to the equalized assessed value, but in our area, we are seeing that. And that's one of the reasons last year when we had to have a higher levy, we had to capture that new property. Taxes in terms of the corporate personal property replacement tax, or we call it CPPRT. This is a tax that is imposed by the state on businesses. At one point, local could impose taxes on personal property, but back in 1979, the law changed, so the state imposes that tax on businesses and utilities, and then that allocation is given to school districts. This past year, we actually received more than what was projected. We projected about 16 million. We received 24 million. Now again, that's based on our area, economics, those types of things. And I'll talk a little bit later in terms of some things that we're doing within the budget that's going to coincide with the master facilities plan. However, for this year, we are expecting a decrease. There has been some different calculations that has occurred throughout the state that they are going to decrease the CPPRT because potentially more was allocated than what it should have been. However, it's still more than what we received 2 years ago or 3 years ago, which was $10 million. So we're projected to be at 16 million, but again, 3-4 years ago it was 10 million. So we're still expecting it to be somewhere in between those two. EBF, and you'll see this when I talk to you about it in the presentation. There's some information in regards to that. So I'll switch to the presentation as we move through. And of course, we always start with our mission statement. And then from there, we talk about the type of funds that we have. So these are our funds where we have allocations. So you have your 10 fund, which is the education fund. 20 fund is the O&M. Bond and interest is 30, transportation is 40, Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund is 50, Social Security is 51, site and construction 60, working cash 70, 80 is tort, fire and prevention and safety is 90. Our sources of revenue, we receive the majority of our sources of revenue from local property taxes, 72.22%, state 19.01, and federal was 8.77. The sources of revenue, federal grants, Title I, Title II, Title IV. So when we speak of federal, that's what we, for the most part, speaking about is title. There are some special ed IDEA grants associated with that. And then, of course, the federal school breakfast program also. Medicaid fee-for-service. State revenue, the largest portion of state revenue is the evidence-based funding, and I have a slide that I will share there. Voc Ed education, special ed private facility, CTE innovation grants. We also are completing the last, distribution of the third installment of ESSER, which is the American Rescue Plan. We have to expend those funds by September of 2024. So we're in our last year of what we consider ESSER 3, right? We had 1, 2, and now we're 3. So as of next year, September 24, all of those grants are gone. And next year I'll talk more about how we absorbed a lot of those costs in our budget, which we started 3 years ago. And then we also have the Renew America School Grant, which allows us to start to move towards electrifying our transportation building. We're receiving roughly $1.1 million, and that would allow us to install a solar array, a microgrid to capture energy, a charging station, and 2 electric buses. So overall, it was, think about 20 school districts and $15 million that was allocated between the 15 school districts. We also have submitted for the EPA grant, which would allow for another 25 electric school buses. So we're starting that process.
Dr. Hampton,
Yes.
normally we lease our buses. Are we actually going to own these buses, or do we lease those as well?
No, we will own these buses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
This slide here, I added some extra data to this, which is the adequacy, and I just felt that it's good information to see, because we always added the dollar amount, but we always talk about adequacy or how much we're not funded or what is the gap and things like that. So you can see back in FY18, which is when it started, we were at 58% adequacy, which basically means we were 42% less funded than where we should have been, because 100 is the goal, right? But you can see in essentially those 7 years, we are now at 82% adequacy. So there has been some significant gains in regards to closing that gap, and that was the goal of EBF funding, was that schools who truly needed those additional funds to help support low income, special ed, ELL, would receive additional funds on top of their regular allocation. So when you see the base minimum funding in FY17, that was the baseline. Any dollars additional to that was to help support these different areas within the school district. So now we are at 82% adequacy. That also, there's a very complicated calculation. So as we saw that EAV goes up, in terms of the need from the state starts to go down, right? So there's a combination of those things, but the EBF funding is working. We're roughly almost $15 million more than where we were 7 years ago. So it is definitely working, and you know, all the presentations that you've seen over the past 7 years, whether it's additional staff, whether it's construction projects, other programs, other support services, a lot of those have been funded by the additional funds of EBF. Sources of expenditures, salaries and benefits, 64.35%. Salaries and benefits are always the majority of your costs. Purchase services, 13.03%. Supplies and materials, 5.82%. Capital outlay, 2.82%. Bonds and leases, 7.30. Tuition, 6.68. So this past school year, essentially this is where we ended, and this is before the unaudited numbers. So the auditors come in August, and they actually audit. There may be some adjustments, but then they submit the final report in October, present to the board in November. Our largest fund is education fund, roughly $94 million. Operations and maintenance at 19.5, bond and interest at 10.6, transportation 10.8, municipal retirement social security 4.9, site and construction 15 million, working cash 1.2 million, toward immunity 6.1. Expenditures by fund, again, education being the largest, roughly 82.5 million, operations and maintenance 14.8, bond and interest 9.6, transportation 7.1, municipal retirement social security 3.4, site and construction 1.8, toward immunity 4.3. So when we look at the over and under, total revenues for this past year, $162,712,000. Total expenditures, $123,714,664, with a surplus of $38.9 million. Of that, roughly 18 million of that is from the additional CPPRT that we're talking about. So with the additional dollars that we've been talking about, and part of the funding the master facilities plan, we have started over the past 2 years transferring dollars to the construction fund to start to prepare for the master facilities plan, in addition to what we have already approved, which tonight you'll hear the culinary. And this will continue, and I'll have more information in September. We plan to present the full master facilities plan with estimated costs, with some projection on how to fund that and the plan that we have for that. Operating funds, I always show this because these are the 3 funds that truly gives you the pulse of the district. That's the education fund, the O&M fund, and the transportation fund. Those are the 3, what they call operating funds, that really gives you a pulse of where we are in the district. So for instance, construction, site and construction, that's normally through bonds and or other funds that you put in there. And then once the projects are done, those funds are gone, right? So with that, the over and under, we have a surplus of about 15.2 million in our operating funds. So again, remember, our education fund is the largest, transportation, and O&M. So as we move into FY24, projected education, and you will see it lower than where it was last year, because as we start to see those grants drop off, the funding in these areas will start to decrease, right? The majority of the funding for all of our ESSER were either in O&M or education fund. The O&M to support the indoor air quality projects, right? So education, 88.6, operations and maintenance, 17.4, bond and interest, 10.4, transportation, roughly 10 million, municipal retirement, social security, 5.1, site and construction, 16.8, working cash, 1.9, tort, 5.3. For expenditures, 87.9 million, operations and maintenance, 10.7, bond and interest, 10.3, transportation, 9.7, municipal retirement, social security, 3.5, site and construction, 14.2, tort, 14.8. So we are projecting a surplus of about 14.5 million for next school year, with revenues being roughly 155 million and expenditures being 141 million. For operating funds, we're expecting a surplus of about 7.8, with revenue being roughly 116 million and expenditures being 108 million. So also what goes into the projections when we start to talk about these things, again, we talked about ESSER, talked about site and construction, we talked about transportation. With all the expenditures, this also reflects our health insurance. We do have an insurance committee where we work with all union groups and administration and our broker to ensure that we have a quality plan for the district. Because as you know, salaries, benefits, all of those things work together. Benefits are just as important, sometimes more important, sometimes when we start to talk about salaries because of the way the structure of your plan is. So we work hard to make sure that we have a quality insurance plan because that's part of how we attract and retain staff, right? So that's projected to be 3%. The past 3 years, we had no increase to our insurance in terms of staff. We've been operating at pretty good in terms of our insurance costs, but you know, we'll see where that goes come September. It's time for renewal. Technology, IMRF, operations and maintenance is in there again. Transportation fund pretty much stays steady, and we're expecting to operate pretty good as a district. There is new legislation that's now starting to speak to fund balances, and I'll share that information in September, and I have an analysis of what's come out of Springfield associated with that. But in a nutshell, what it truly is you can't have no more than 2.5 times what your normal expenditures or your average expenditures are over 3 years, right? So if it's $1 million, I can't have no more than 2.5 million in my fund balance, right? So we're starting some calculations with that to see where we potentially may need to spend down fund balances. And again, we knew this was coming, so we're preparing for it. And in many instances, when we have those types of things occur, there may be just some transfer to the site and construction fund, and we put it in the master facilities plan. So we're starting to look at those things now. We're working with also our bond consultant. And as we complete the master plan and have our estimates, then we'll really get more deeply into where we need to be and how we need to structure those types of things. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know Dr. Hampton is not going far,
Right.
because we have our culinary program presentation from
Yep.
Dr. Hampton and team.
Yeah. So I'll start just with a reminder to the board. So we're finally here to present the culinary information. So last year, or even 2 years ago, along with the renovations we're seeing at the campuses for the football fields, tracks, upgrading to the lighting, the sound, new entryways, culinary was supposed to be a part of that project last summer. However, in speaking with the administration architects, we decided that a master facilities plan assessment would be best. We wanted to make sure the spaces that we recommended to the board and for renovations were the spaces that need to be renovated. So we've gone through that process, and we've determined truly what we decided on 2 years ago are the areas where we're going to actually either renovate and or add an addition at West for culinary. So we're at that point now where and I know you've seen in your board packet, where architects in Gilbane are going to present the renderings and schematics of where we're going to be with culinary and costs associated with that. And again, with bonds and construction funds, this was already set aside so that we can continue these projects. So I'll bring up White and Gilbane to present.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you,
Good
Dr. Hampton.
evening.
I was going to introduce kind of the master plan, how this fit in, but Dr. Hampton did a good job doing that. So I'm Neeti Shah. I'm a project architect and project manager with White & Company. We are working on both these culinary projects, our architects and engineers, along with Gilbane. As Dr. Hampton said, these were slated a couple of years ago, but we kind of took a step back to make sure this was part of your larger master plan, which is a 10-year roadmap for your schools. We didn't want to put anything in your schools that weren't part of this larger goal. So we wanted to make sure whatever we placed at Central and West fit into that overall roadmap. We met with both the administration teams and kind of laid out a plan of where both these locations were, made sure that they were worked with the schools. And we started meeting with the culinary staff this past spring before the summer to make sure that both programs were what they wanted for their curriculum. We're still meeting a few times just to button everything up, make sure when we have the final drawings that everything's exactly how they want. But we want to present to you what we have so far. Steve Shearer is an associate principal with White & Company. He'll be walking through the design. You've probably seen him a few times. He's been working with the district a long time. And David Norris, after that, will give you a budget and construction schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Needy, and thank you all. We're very happy to share with you the design progress on the facilities at both campuses for the culinary program. And we'll start with the West, and you'll find that we accomplish the same goals at both campuses, but just in different ways. And that's just taking into account the fact that both buildings are very different, but then also taking account how the piece of this puzzle sort of fit into that bigger master plan. So at West, we're actually looking at a building addition to move the culinary program into. And it does a number of things. One, it actually allows that program to move closer to the remainder of the career and technical education spaces, and that was sort of one of the drivers of the master plan is how can we get some of the curriculum and programs together in the school to make it better for A, wayfinding, but B, just better collaboration among departments. The other thing it does is by putting the culinary program into an addition, it frees up their existing spaces for more classrooms or more opportunities that we identified in the master plan. And the last thing it does, which is pretty significant, is actually starts to make a connection from the E building on the right to the remainder of the campus. And that was another driver that we heard from the facility master plan is how could we offer some ease of the congestion in the hallways, and how can we make it better from students to get from one side of the building to the other. So by putting an addition at this location of the building, there's going to be a new hallway that connects the E building to the A building, essentially, just to give another means for students to get from one side of the building to the other. And you'll see when we talk more in depth about the facility master plan, that's actually the first phase of a longer idea that could actually extend that hallway all the way to the science and athletic functions too. But this is the area that we're looking at, and the next image is sort of an enlarged plan of that area. So the lower left, where it says existing photography lab, that's the existing corner of the A building that houses the CTE functions. And then the upper right of your screen where it says existing classrooms, that's the corner of the E building. So we're infilling that with two brand new labs. One is a foods lab, the other is a culinary lab. And then you see at the top of the screen that predominant hallway that would connect the E building to the other hallway that connects A and B. So it's another thoroughfare for students, but it's one that sort of showcases these new labs. And you'll see that we have examples of, students could actually see into these labs. It sort of puts the learning on display, that gets excited about what's happening in there. The students that are working in there can be more prideful of their work. And we have other images that will give you a better idea of what the interiors of these look like, but they're really geared towards these islands of teaching stations where students could be working together in groups, teaching, and then the teacher has the right amenities and equipment to also properly demonstrate within the rooms, even the right technology to show what they're doing at the front of the room. And little things like thinking about just a drop-off area for backpacks. So we're not mixing students' personal belongings with the food that's happening in the labs. And then the third space, sort of in that purple color, is what we called sort of a culinary classroom. This program at both campuses is highly popular, to the point where they're overbooked, and right now the labs are actually used classrooms to hold class in when the labs are full. So this is a way of just offering another classroom space, primarily for culinary, but it's another teachable teaching or schedulable teaching station in the building. And that would be outfitted with the right kind of furniture, that a class could happen in there, and at least the means of which a teacher or a guest cook could come in and do a demonstration. But not necessarily everyone's cooking in the lab too. It just offers that flexibility, offers another schedulable teaching station, even offers some curriculum opportunities in terms of the way it's furnished. hospitality, busing, and waiting, that all can be kind of rolled into the program with this third space. And then the fourth one is that area in gray. It's just having a shared storage room that's right size between the program. Again, anything that doesn't need to be where the students are cooking, they could have in that storage room, things like laundry for aprons and towels, but just making sure that the space is there that they need. And we went through with the staff in terms of all the equipment that they need, and that's sort of where we're at in the process right now, is just kind of getting the equipment kind of identified and into the plans. The next image is just, I call these sort of dollhouse views. So imagine we just took the roof off and we're looking down into the space. It's just a different three-dimensional view of what the spaces look like. But you know, a lot of our conversations with the staff and the popularity of this program, you know, these spaces are more akin with maybe a professional cooking environment. Maybe not to the same degree, but maybe more in line with students' expectations of what they're seeing on TV, on the Food Network, and maybe a little less like maybe the home ec rooms that we've been to. And that was done with intention to really just try to make sure that these facilities could offer just authentic learning experiences for the students. And because of the addition at West, we just want to be mindful of sort of what the exterior looks like. And you know, it is a rather straightforward addition that connects one building to the other. So we thought it was just appropriate to be as contextual as we can. So you'll see materials that you're already familiar with that were being proposed for the addition. There's a predominant red metal color, an existing brick to match. And then this is sort of a view of what that addition looks like. We're really just trying to be contextual to the existing career and technical education building, providing an area of cover, because this is also a primary exit for students to access the bus drop-off, but lots of daylight into that classroom. And then on the other side, where there's a courtyard, lots of daylight that would be borrowed through the hallway to get to the classrooms too. And in that lower right of the image, you see an example of just try to put some visibility into these studios, sort of put that learning on display and sort of showcase these new spaces. And the next is sort of a sneak peek. It's still conceptual in nature about what these finished spaces are going to look like. So in addition to sort of double checking all the equipment, in a week or two we're going to be presenting actual finishes to the administration to verify that. But you see this idea of islands, you know, students could be cooking together, the right technology that could be displayed in the room, and just different finishes that, again, are more akin to a very professional environment or environment you might even see in higher ed too.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are there additional restroom facilities in that new building addition?
In this edition, there's not. The nearest ones would be an E building or an A building.
Is that something that was thought about? I know that distance from bathrooms can sometimes be problematic for kiddos.
Yeah, in the
Is it like distance-wise?
Yeah, in the larger master plan, it's considered. We did review everything with what's required, and the amount of students here didn't trigger the need for a new bathroom.
They're pretty close in the A building.
Yeah, the A building is down the hall and to the left. And then this is a view of that classroom space. It's a little washed out on the left, but the idea of lots of daylight. There could be the availability for demonstration or guests coming in for a demonstration, but furnished in a way that could be used for class, but also other culinary programmatic needs. And then at Central, same types of spaces and goals were achieved, but here it was ended up that it was best just to renovate those spaces where they're currently at in the building, which is on the third floor in the hallway that sort of leads to the D stair and then has the gym on the left side of the screen. But also just find ways to also expand the footprint of what those rooms are too, and I'll walk you through that as well. So this is sort of an enlarged plan of what you just saw circled. So on the left is the existing gym, and then on the right on the diagonal is the 4-story center courtyard in the building. Currently on those 2 labs where it's labeled purple, that's where the existing rooms are, but they're very small, they're very tight. Obviously their equipment and their finishes are are sort of due for upgrading, and there's sort of small classrooms in between. Here, we plan to renovate that, get the labs right-sized to the amount of students that need to be in there, and then you'll see the same amenities. Get some shared storage between the two labs that they could share, a place where personal belongings can be dropped off, where hand washing can happen right away before they actually students enter the lab. And then across the hall in sort of that trapezoidal shape, I wish we would have brought a picture of what that space looks like right now, but it's actually a storage space that has some stuff in it. The finishes are dated, you know, the ceiling is in disrepair. That is a space that we plan to refinish, rehab, refurnish, and create another teaching space out of that. So that was one of the drivers of the master plan, is where can we find space that is currently being underutilized. I think that space sort of exemplifies that idea. And it turns out that space was actually the original cooking class in the original design of the building. So in many ways, we're sort of restoring the original function to that space. But that's the version of the culinary classroom that will happen across the hall. And during design, we very much deem this hallway now the culinary corridor. It's very much going to be where these programs live. They'll be showcased just like at West. And at the bottom of the screen, that hallway actually leads to the D stairs. So it's at a predominant crossroads of the campus as well. Same thing here, just sort of that three-dimensional view so you get a better idea of what the interior layout of the space is, introducing some new windows from the hallway into these labs. Again, just so the learning and teaching isn't always just siloed. And then a conceptual view of what these labs look like too. The palettes and the materials will be, you know, the same function at each campus, but probably different, just to respect the different identities of each school. And that's something that we're working on right now. And then a view of sort of that what's currently a storage room, but will be refinished into a culinary classroom. And there's actually already windows up high in that space too. So it's another space that daylight will be given to the students as well. Those are actually windows that are above the gym right now. And then with that, just to give an update on sort of timeline and budget for these projects, I'll turn it over to David.
We always end with a real exciting spreadsheet that nobody can see, so. So what we put together is a conceptual budget, since we're at a more conceptual design stage right now. As we move through the schedule in the next few months, we'll be actually doing estimates on schematic design, design development. But what's in the packet is the conceptual budget. We have it broken down into 3 areas. The first area is what we'd call construction, bricks and mortar. And it totals for both projects. Central is 4.3 million. West is 6.1 million, for a total of 10.4 million in construction of the bricks and mortar. The second category of cost are what we include as escalation. So we always bring escalation to about the midpoint of construction for this project, for our projects. Design contingency and construction contingency. So we're at conceptual design right now, so as we move through each phase of design, schematic design, it gets more developed. That design contingency eventually rolls up into the construction dollars as we uncover more details of the project. And then the final cost category are called owner's costs, sometimes soft costs, but that includes AE, CM, and then the owner's miscellaneous costs includes FF&E, testing services, and miscellaneous other costs that's necessary to build the building. So all of those together, total project budget is 17.1 million. And then as we go through, as I said, we will start developing more detailed estimates rather than kind of get away from budgeting to more counting bricks and mortar and develop a more solid cost. Schedule-wise, we do have a preliminary schedule on the sheet. So Joliet West, being an addition from ground up, certainly it's going to take longer to build. We'll start in June. We'll actually bid both projects together, and we'll have some economy in that. We'll be able to, since they're actually off schedule from each other, we'll have an opportunity to bid finishes together, since finishes at Central will be going separately from finishes at West. We won't be competing for the same manpower. Board approval, we'll bid in November. Board approval will be at the December board meeting. Construction would start for both projects in June of next year, though at Central, we may have some opportunity to get into some of the spaces earlier, like spring break, to help expedite that schedule. Joliet West, being an addition, will take longer. That will go into, you'll be ready for occupancy in August of this next school year. And Joliet Central, we're looking at going into October, so it's much shorter duration. It's certainly longer than a summer project, but we're looking at turning it over in October.
Any questions from the board?
I know it was just conceptual drawing. But I'm always concerned about access, and so I didn't see any like lower tables or facilities for students in wheelchairs. Is that built into the project?
Yes, there definitely will be. And what we'll do, as we've done with previous projects, as we move forward, always share the information that information with the board. So as we have more specific renderings, the type of furniture repurchasing, all of those things. So you'll start to see those pieces as we start to move forward and be more defined with these types of things. And when we do furniture selection, we do include administration and the staff in that selection. So we do have that conversation around different type of seating, accommodation for disabilities, all of those types of things. So just wanted to share that information. And then also with this project, and we talked about this last year, we'll also have for next summer the softball, baseball infields being turfed, and then the tennis courts at West. So you'll be hearing more information about that next month at the master facilities plan, and then we'll start to bring in bids and things for the fall. And like we also done in the past, we'll try to get ahead of everyone, because again, when we talk about these type of projects, we have a small window to complete them. I mean, they're doing a great job now with the athletic fields, but literally it's June, July, almost half of August, and then, you know, they're to turn it over. But we also know with the internal spaces that potentially it can go into the next school year, like when we did the auditoriums. We had the liberty during COVID to do the media centers, and no one was here, so we could just get in there and do the things that we need to do. But when we start to talk about internal spaces, it's normally the 2.5, 3 months to try to get those spaces completed. And we do work with the administration and staff that if we need to adjust schedules throughout the year, then they'll adjust curriculum, things like that. Like at Central and West, if we need to, well, more at Central, we may have to relocate and have some different types of stations that they work on for about a month and a half. So we'll work with Chris and the staff at Central and West to come up with a plan. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? All right, you're welcome.
Thank you very
you
much.
all.
It's exciting.
It's beautiful.
Our next presentation is our educational services update. So Mrs. McDonald will provide that for us.
Thank you. So thank you. What we'll be going over are the academic recovery structures that we offer, and the data that I'll be sharing was from this previous school year. I do also have in the audience, I asked our administrative team, those that supervise those areas, to be present. So thank you for being here so they can answer any questions that may arise. I want to start off with our belief statements, and I'm going to read these to you. I'm going to stand up and actually look at my computer because I can't read those from so far away. And I want to make sure that when I read the belief statements, they should, as I read them, you should hear them, you should feel them in the programs that we offer for our students in regards to recovery. So every student deserves to be supported. Lifelong learning is necessary to thrive in a continuously changing world. Individuals learn at different rates, different ways, and a variety of settings. Motivation, perseverance, determination, and a growth mindset strengthen the ability of an individual to reach potential, and all people can learn. So those are the ones that really stood out to me when I read our belief statements, to the recovery options that we offer all our students here at JTHS. And when we think about programs and when we sit down as a team, we always think about access. So how our students have access to this, how do we support them, and what is that academic or other impacts on them. So I'm going to start off with what we offer. So I tried to tier it for the board similar to the MTSS presentation. So if you look at this slide for the structure that we offer in the district, it's similar to the bottom where it's all students, and as we get more specific, it's for a few students. So I'm going to start off with what we offer our students in all classrooms. So, and I structure it for the board to include what the program is, who do we target, the timeline, the costs and funding, the evaluation of the program, and next steps. So I'm gonna have to move closer. Wow, my eyes are getting bad. So program overview for unit recovery. So in all classrooms, all core classrooms, we offer the opportunity for students to retake an assessment, whether they failed it or they did not meet their personal goal. So if I got a C, I have the potential to retake that assessment with the understanding that the teacher works with the student with a focus of relearning and then reassessing. So again, the targeted students, any student that failed the assessment or did not meet their personal goal, the timeline of the program, it's the entire school year. Again, this is happening in our core classrooms. Cost and funding, there could be potential costs related to adding additional resources by our ILT for resources or assessments. How do we evaluate this program? It's our semester grades. So we look at our passing rates for each semester. Next steps, we do have another layer for students. So if I'm a student in my Algebra 1 class and I failed my assessment and I worked with my teacher, so we focused on relearning and I reassessed again and I still struggled, we have something put in place by our MTSS teams. They're called recovery days, and we're building them into the school year. So then they would schedule me down to work with a math teacher on a specific day, provide more targeted instruction, and then I would go back and work with my math teacher and retake the assessment. So it's another layer that we're putting in place for some students. It's a very small population that we think will benefit from this. The Central Campus piloted this last year, and it seemed to work. So they work with, so for example, they'll work with the math teachers. They know the pacing of the assessments, and then they will schedule specific days to pull students out of their class and provide additional instruction, and then reassess. The next level of credit recovery support is called our Gateway 1.0. This came out during COVID. It's an opportunity outside of the school day for students to make up one credit of a class that they did not earn credit in. So for example, we usually use this for our seniors. So we're going into the school year. We will target our seniors between 14.5 and 15.5 credits, and their counselors will attempt to enroll them into this program. So it's offered during the school year. We use it through Apex. So I'm a senior, I have my schedule. I'm still 1 credit short, or I failed English 3 semester 2. I can take that class through Apex outside the school day. I am supported through a content area teacher who checks in with me, and we do have goals, and we're trying to tighten it up a little, because we would say, okay, you have this semester to finish the class. We need more checkpoints. That's what we found. So checking, making sure the student, okay, Diane, you have 6 weeks to finish this semester class. So giving a little more parameters. This is funded through our ARP grant. As Dr. Hampton said, we're going into our last year of this. So these are conversations that we would have to talk about as funding, because we spent. Thank you. Mrs. McMorris oversees this program, but you could see when we talk about evaluation, yes, it does work. These are credit recoveries, and students are recovering credits. we're thinking about expanding the program to include, like I said, criteria of failing, but also sometimes we offer this up to some of our sophomore students who become off track from their freshman year. But that's a case-by-case scenario, and the process for enrolling goes from the counselor to the assistant principals. They review the students' transcripts, then it goes to the principals, and then it goes to Mrs. McMorris to enroll the student. Questions on Gateway 1.0?
So is the 55,000 the cost of the Apex program? And is there additional cost for the teacher intervention and
The-
monitoring and the opening of the quizzes and tests and all that other
So
stuff?
that cost is salary.
Is that part of the 55,000?
No, that's salary only.
So how much in salary?
No, that total cost right there is salary only.
Oh, that's salary
Yeah.
only, so not the cost of the Apex program?
No, the Apex program we have built into Title I. I did not include that in the cost.
Okay.
But I can let you know, but we use Apex in multiple programs. The next level of recovery is our summer school. So again, we offer 2 sessions over summer, allowing students to make up credit. We target students that have previously failed a class or need a class to get back on track.
Did
I
you
mean,
skip, I think
did I
you skipped a
skip one?
slide, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Meg. So the next one is our winter or spring recovery. So this happens at the end of each semester. Winter and spring recovery is an extension of the semester. So the way we see it is students need in a few more days, a couple more hours to finish up their core work. So it's always 4 to 5 days, it's 20 hours. We target students that have an overall semester grade of 50% or higher in a core class. And our priorities are always English and math because of the graduation requirements. Timeline of the program, 4 days right after winter break and 4 days right after the last day of semester 2. Cost and funding, this is again funded through the ARP grant. The cost is first semester, so winter, and then spring, so the 2 costs. And then credits earned, you could see from the winter and then the spring. One thing we don't do is provide transportation for the recovery. Working with Mr. Shaw, there are times where our bus drivers do need a break. So right after the end of the semester, first and second, they do, like talking with them, they do need a break. So that's something that we can continue to have conversations with. And another thing that the board asked, I think at my June presentation, is that we're going to flag students, so like we can put a flag in Infinite Campus, so when we run reports, we can pull that flag and see how they're doing in their current classes. So that's something we'll be implementing this school year. Questions on winter and spring?
So we don't offer transportation. Help me understand, the bus drivers need a break. 4 day, it's 4-day program.
It's
How many
winter
students?
break, so it's Christmas, like winter break and the end of the school year. Because they start up again with, they have like 2 weeks off. And then, I mean,
So it's just
I'm
hard,
just
it's
gonna
hard to,
talk.
it's hard to fill the positions.
It's hard to fill the position, so we're short bus drivers right now. They're driving buses, we're all going on winter break, and it's during the holidays, so it may be, the way we schedule it, 2 days the week of December and 2 days in the week of January. So that becomes like, trying to get people to commit to that. And then the summer, we just finished the semester, they have a week off, and then summer school starts, which we provide transportation for that.
Have we asked the bus drivers if they would be willing to do that, or are we assuming?
I'll respond, yeah.
Okay.
So we have surveyed the transportation staff, and I think just because, I mean, we're down almost 40 bus drivers. Many of them are already doing double, triple, quadruple duty, and we don't want to burn them out. And those 2 weeks goes fast. However, with that being said, when we negotiate, we're talking about some incentives for those times, even in the summer. We didn't get to negotiate, we just rolled over the contract. But that is gonna be a discussion so that if we can incentivize some to wanna work, like during winter break or during the summer, then there may be some additional compensation.
Okay, thanks.
So we did a whole year of online instruction. We can't do 4 days of online instruction for students that couldn't, like, don't have access to transportation. I mean, that's an equity issue. I mean, if you don't have a car and you can't get here, then you're out your credits. Is there any discussion of,
We've done online credit recovery, and the feedback from the teachers is that it's better in person. Our students are not fully engaged online. Attendance, is hard to get them in person, but it's even harder to get them online. So when we did do credit recovery online, that was the feedback from the teachers.
Do we have any data to support how many students are failing versus how many are actually getting their credits for the winter and the summer?
That's part of the reports that I do.
Okay.
So in the report, it shows how many students we enrolled, how many students participated, and then how many students earn credit. So that is part of the yearly report.
I guess what I'm asking is, so at the end of the semester, we know how many students have failed. After that, how many students are actually enrolling to get their credit recovery
In this program,
in
right?
this program? Like,
So, yeah, that's data that I have access, we have access to now. So, we have that, but also there are limitations in staff. So we have limitations of teachers that can commit to this time to do recovery. So if we may have more students that failed Algebra 1, but if we only have 3 instructors, that's all we can fill.
additionally, is there a criteria for this
Yes,
program?
you have to
Okay.
be between 50 and 59%. And then, yes, and then there
Yes.
are criteria too. Like if the student was chronically absent, the teachers fill out a recommendation form, putting in what assessments they need to make up and give feedback on like how they've supported them. We ask for the interventions put in place. So then the curriculum directors use that information when they make phone calls and enroll the students.
Thank you.
And there's also, one of the problems too, that is problematic if we're able to do transportation with this program. This is almost immediately right after, the semester ends and starts. So we're talking about all of our kids and figuring out what the routes would be for the specific kids that enroll. Because basically as kids, so these are kids that are close to passing, so we don't know until like their final exam is in or like right before grades go out. So the curriculum directors are calling, and other teachers and everything are calling like the day school ends or the day that exam is taken. So another problem would be to figure out what the routes would be for the kids in that program, because it's not like you could just do one bus because of how large we are. So that's another issue with this particular program, because we've been doing this credit recovery for probably 12 years now.
Longer, because I did it as a teacher.
So we've been doing this part with the summer one and winter one, it almost starts the next day. So that's another reason why it's problematic, because even some of the kids, they don't know, like, they don't enroll, like, they aren't there the first day. So they'll come the second day and we'll still let them come in because it was such a quick turnaround. So that's another reason that transportation could potentially be an issue with this in figuring out the routes. Now, we can still work on that, but that's one of the problems too with this.
I have a question. Have you guys ever looked at doing it like after school, for like 3-4 weeks after school? So that way there's the transportation, there's, all the other things, the time for it to be arranged and for parents to know, and then we wouldn't have the issues with maybe kids don't come because they're going and traveling.
We could absolutely look at this. The benefit of this program, especially when you're talking about when our freshmen on track, this extension of the 5 days is a continuation of the semester. If they're able to earn their credit, and more so in the summer, it doesn't count against them as not being off track potentially, because it's an extension and their F turns into a D. So if the longer amount of time, the more chance there would be, especially in the summer, that they wouldn't be considered back on track.
I get the summer, but more of like over Christmas break, like, so like having it after school in January, the first, 2-3 weeks.
We could look at something like that. I think it's just lengthening the day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're always gonna look for anything that will possibly, work. I think though, this program, when we look at the credits earned, like, it was 150 credits and 140 credits, so I think we wanna just continue to look at access, cause this particular program is working, and then we can look at those other things in addition.
So that's 300 students that failed.
Potentially, because there might be a kid who goes, do they take more than one
They could.
class potentially?
They
But
could.
most of them, it's one class.
All right. So it starts in the classroom, then we offer the Gateway 1.0. We also offer the winter and spring recovery. And then if that does not fit the student's need, we do offer summer school. And we offer the 2 sessions. The only criteria is that the student has failed the class or needs the class to get back on track. This past school year, we ran it 3 weeks in June, and then we started right away with session 2 the following Monday. We took the week of the 4th of July off because we know a lot of families take vacation. The cost for the cost and funding came out of the ARP grant, close to $117,000. Some semester credits earned was 434. The summer school report is in the board packet, so it'll be after this. You can see the breakdown by campuses and students and courses. One thing that we came across, and you're gonna see this in the summer school reports in Summer Bridge, is that we have students and families that commit to summer school, but then they don't show up. So that is still an area that we struggle with. So when we go into staffing and we say that we need 3 sections of Algebra 1 based on how many students have enrolled, when it's the first few days of school, we don't have students that show up. So then we have 3 staff members that have committed, but we don't have enough students for 3 staff members. So those are some of the struggles that we're going with students or families committing but not showing up.
And just to add to that, we made the decision, and I think it was a good one, but there's no cost
There's no
to summer
cost.
school anymore. Previously, there wasn't that percentage of students that didn't show up because there was the cost associated with it. When there wasn't a cost, and I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing, but when there wasn't a cost, students are saying they're gonna come, but then they don't.
And we did this in response to COVID to cover the cost of summer school to help students get back on track. So again, this is going into our last year with the ARP grant, so we'll have to have conversations as a district if we continue to fund the summer school recovery. Because our families do pay for the enrichment classes, so the honors classes, the advanced classes, but anything that's recovery-wise, we pay for. That's funded out of a grant. Okay. All right, the next program is GAP 910. So this is for our students this is really in response to freshmen that have failed. Freshman year is a hard year for our students, so it's scheduled within the school day for our freshmen that did not pass a lot of their core classes. So our assistant principals build in certain periods that our now sophomores move in and out of to recover credit in English, math, science, and social science. Most of the time they are scheduled into math and English during certain periods because of the 2 classes that take the longest to recover. The students focus on the standards that they did not master their freshman year. So this class, again, is scheduled through the year. The cost and funding, we had 10 sections district-wide last year, which accounts to 2 FTE. At the central campus, you could see we had 138 students scheduled, 143 credits earned, semester credits earned. West, 138, and 121 semester credits earned. Next steps, we have strategy 1.4, which takes into account the academic identity of the district and taking into account just the different needs of our students. Mr. Hackney is in charge of one of the leads on that. So that is something that we would look into about better serving. Like, is this the best structure, or is there something else that we can do for our freshman student or sophomore students? Then a smaller focus is Gateway 2.0. It's a continuation, so it's a combination of online credit recovery. So we use Apex, but this is where we push in social emotional and college and career readiness. The board did visits last year at the Gateway 2.0 programs at both campuses. Again, we're targeting senior students that are credit deficient or at a range where like they need a certain amount of credits to graduate. So like if I'm 4.5 short, and like if I'm short, so if it's 13 to 15.5 credits that we focus in on because they need every credit of that school year to graduate. So really it's identifying students that really need that intensive support, not so much with the academics, but the social emotional and the accountability of doing those checkpoints with academics. So we have a program at each campus. Cost of funding is 4 FTE, so 2 at each campus. The data from last year, Central had 370 semester credits, 56 graduates. West had 148 semester credits and 18 graduates. I just want to point out, Central pulled in not just seniors, but they pulled in some juniors that were getting off track. They identified them through PPS and they put them in the program. So that's what both campuses are going to look into for this year about identifying additional students and then monitoring their progress towards graduation.
So 4 FTE, are those all teacher FTE? So
Yes.
like just under 400,000 in salary for the teaching staff?
It would depend where they're at, but
Yeah.
I mean, somewhere
Ballpark
between
it.
50 and 100, depending on their years of experience.
Okay.
How many people were enrolled in the program?
Yes, Dan and Steve and they're
Yeah,
in the
when we were
audience.
there, it was.
How many students were enrolled
Yeah.
in Gateway? Yes.
I want to say we were, I think we started at like 37 last year at West. We were upward of about 50 students.
And then there's something new, and we just want to thank Mike O'Shea and Marissa Cantu for coming up with this idea. JJC has a program, it's called Early Leavers, and our students students that are 2 credits deficient for graduation have enrolled in this program. JJC has been putting students on a wait list the last 2 years, so Mike and Marissa came up with the idea of, well, let's offer our own program if the students can't get into JJC's program. So they tried it out this school year. They targeted the students who didn't graduate that would go into JJC. We funded out a grant, so we spent close to $6,300, and we had 28 graduates. We still have students that will go into the JJC early leavers, but the ones that committed and worked with Mike and Marissa this summer, they were very appreciative, and they graduated. So they met that deadline for the district. So next steps, having our MTSS teams, again, continuing to monitor student behavior, attendance, grades, so our bag data, our strategy 4, where the language says about reimagining the instructional and academic identity of our district, and then strategy 2.2, providing that supportive programming that improves the success of all student subgroups. So we know that our ARP grants, we have 1 more year, so that's really our opportunity to sit down and look at these programs. Are they truly effective in all senses, and how can we fund them outside of our ARP grant.
So are you gonna do a program review of all intervention programs with like an outside company?
No, that would be just us looking at our data and determining what is the most effective.
So it appears we got 7 programs to recover credits. 6, unit recovery is kind of just in the classroom, right? So maybe not a specialized program. Of those 6, are those offered to the advanced students or honors or dual credit if they were to fail?
For classroom, everybody.
Outside of the unit recovery? Gateway 1.0, winter, summer, credit
Winter
recovery?
and spring recovery, yes.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say AP, but students say that have failed in English. So if I failed honors English 1, we would want to get them into winter recovery, and then we would also have conversations with the families about, is that the correct placement?
For sure,
And
for
would
sure.
potentially move them to like an English 1 class, but we would have to look at that. We've done that multiple times. For summer school, yes, like if they failed an honors class, and again, it's the same procedure, are they correctly placed, or is honors class the best placement for them?
But that's post them failing, right? So-
Yes,
So
yes.
there is recovery for them if they
Yes,
were to fail? Okay,
absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Diane. And I also want to thank everybody
Yeah, thank you for being here.
who oversees these programs, and then also the teachers that staff these programs, because while there's a couple that are done during the school day, many of these are after the school year ends or during winter breaks, and like, that's difficult. And so without our teachers agreeing to do it, even with pay, we wouldn't be able to do these programs without them. And many of them do credit recovery and then turn around and go straight
summer
into
school.
summer school. And so we're just very thankful that our staff is willing to do it, because everybody needs a little bit of a break at the end of a school year, and some of our staff continue to work. So thank you to everybody. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I know Diane, and we're happy to answer any questions, but the last 3 items under superintendent reports are the summer school advancement report, the summer school recovery report, and the annual summer bridge report. And those are reports that the board sees each year, and like I said, we're happy to answer any questions about those reports.
Questions? Okay. So we'll now go to our action items. Action item A, Joliet Township High School Agreement with Guardian Angel Community Services. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Just grateful for Guardian Angel Community Services and all the work that their social workers and their staff do every day.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Action item B, agreement between Joliet Township High School and After the Peanut. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Oop, sorry.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Just
When,
grateful to-
how are they going about making sure that they get a robust group of students to participate in the program? Are they advertising it out just to those programs, or is it gonna be a district-wide push-out email, or is it
I will have to
targeted student?
ask Ms. Cage that question, and then I can report that back to the board.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Action item C, 2023-2024 tentative budget. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Action item D, disposal of equipment. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Action item E, Joliet Township CEO Program.
So moved, yes, all the way.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Go ahead, no, I'm just
No, I
excited.
just want to let the board know and thank Cornell Lurie, who's present here today from Midland. He brought this idea to the community and the format. This is a program, and I know I've shared some information with the board in the past, that has been done throughout Illinois and other places. And this is a perfect fit for where we're at with our career pathway experiences. And so we're very, very excited about it. So this is the intent to move forward. And we have our various business partners at the table who have also committed to work with us. And so there will be 3 Joliet Township board members on the overall board to help with that. And then I know Cornell will be on there as well. So I just want to thank Cornell for bringing this to us.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
You said perfect.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Abstain.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Action item F, second reading of board policies.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Action item G, personnel reports. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes. Action item H, motion to approve the destruction of the verbatim record for those closed session meetings of the Board of Education from 2005 through January 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
And part 2 to that action item, motion to find that the need for confidentiality exists for all remaining closed session meetings. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments?
I don't understand the issue.
So the destruction of the items from 2005 through January 31 of 2022 was made. All the remaining items were reviewed by the district attorney and would stay confidential, not be released to the public.
We discussed it during closed session.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Dr. Huntington?
Abstain.
Unfinished business.
None,
New business.
none.
Are there any board reports?
So many board reports. No, I'll make it quick as possible. I just want to say, going back to what Ilanda said earlier, Dr. Hampton, we do have to rely on our community and bring that together, and that helps us in every way, including fiscally. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that came together these last few weeks, specifically Mount Zion. If every organization and person in church could just model them, it would be amazing. To get together to remind people that education is at the heart of our community and it's going to be the success of our community. It was just amazing, and I wish I could have actually been there. I didn't get to go. I was out of town with my daughter this weekend, right before school starts. Fun, and I just heard all about it, and people were really empowered and enlightened, and was very happy. Some people had like tears of joy, so I thought that was pretty great. And all the back to school fairs and the 815 youth and everything that Amy Sanchez and the Collins Street Council is doing. So a lot of really good work. I was excited for everyone that got tenured tonight. Some of the folks I went to school with, some of the folks that have touched the children in my life and just have made such a big impact. When you hear your child say, I actually want to read again. You're like, wait, what? They haven't, and you haven't heard them say that in a few years because of a teacher that inspired them. So to see some of those teachers tonight get tenured was really awesome. I want to thank the board members that brought up the importance, again, and you've heard me talk about this way before I was a board member, transportation and access is so important, and I'm glad that we're continuing to ask and talk about that and find new and unique ways to make sure that our kids have equitable access. You can have the best program in the world, but if somebody doesn't know about it or can't get there, it doesn't matter. So I'm grateful for that. And one more thing, I just want to remind people, as much as we're asking from you this school year, self-care is actually a thing that's not just about, pedicures and bubble baths. It's about like taking the time you need to get the things you need to get done. Just take care of yourselves. And one of my favorite quotes, and one day I'm going to hold this in my office, when little people or children, remember, children's brains are not fully developed until at least 26. Bruce Perry would say 28. So when children are overwhelmed by big emotions, it is our job to share our calm and not join their chaos. It's extremely important, so we have to be calm. We have to be taking care of ourselves in order to be able to take care of the children in our community. So it's going to be a great 23-24 school year.
I know it was not big fanfare, but congratulations on putting in for your retirement. I noticed.
I had other ideas other than congratulations, but you know what? Congratulations.
Right away.
I threatened to not sign it. No.
Any other board reports? All right. At this time, members of the public may make comments to the Board of Education on any item concerning the district. Please note that this is not the opportunity or the venue for the Board of Education members to engage in conversation or provide responses. The Board of Education respects and values the information delivered to us during public comment. Your comment should be directed to the Board of Education, and all in attendance must conduct themselves with respect and civility towards others. You must conclude your comments in 3 minutes. Ms. Rico?
Sure. Araceli Chavez.
Good evening, members of the JTHS board and guests. My name is Araceli Chavez, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the JTHS office professionals. Yesterday, during our welcome back meeting, we were reminded again how relationship building is vital to the advancement of the district and community. This sentiment has been echoed several times by our superintendent and district leaders alike. However, this enthusiasm has not been translated into our contract negotiations thus far. During yesterday's meeting, our Board of Ed president informed us to reach out if we needed help. During this same meeting, our superintendent called for us to level up and assured us that, quote, "every individual deserves to be supported." We are holding you to these statements and once again pleaded for the board collectively to level up as well and be active participants in this process. Despite our continuous good faith bargaining, we have been dismissed, laughed at, and made for feel unvaluable at times during our 9 negotiation meetings. If relationships matter the way they are communicated to us, this is an opportunity for the board and all its members to step up. Show us and the community at large that JTHS office professionals are, as Dr. Guzman stated yesterday, the cream of the crop, by paying us a livable wage. It may not have been the board's intent to create a hostile environment for its office professionals, but as Dr. Guzman stated yesterday, intent does not supersede impact. We are requesting that the board of its members join us in the joint mediation to finally grant its office professionals the fair contract that we deserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sam Coffey.
Everyone complains that there isn't enough parking. It's too far. The lots are both horrible to drive on. Most people have to street park on and on and on. However, one thing we usually fail to discuss is the inequity in relation to parking passes. Currently at JT, it costs $100 for a parking permit, $100 for a parking pass. When obtaining and keeping a driver's license in Illinois costs more than anything else in most of our lives at our age. Personally, as a 17-year-old male driver, my insurance costs upwards of $2,000 a year. Obtaining a permit and later a license at the DMV costs about $80. If a student doesn't want to wait for high school driver's ed and would like to obtain their license at 16 so they can get a job, at least $500 more. Also, we all know gas prices are high, so think about what you pay per week or month and add that too. When you consider the amount we already have to pay, is it necessary to add another burden on the students when there are already so many barriers to driving? Parents will pay that $100 when they can afford it, so who actually gets to park in the lot? Probably not the kids who are paying for everything themselves and can't afford to shell out another dollar to park at their school. Probably not the kids who work on their own cars and spend every spare dollar to keep them running. Probably not the kids who weren't sure if they'd be able to pay for insurance to drive at all. The parking pass charge should not be creating another rift between economically advantaged and disadvantaged students. And I think that's the last thing this school needs or wants. Charging for parking is even worse when you consider the state of our parking lots and transportation in general. Our parking lots are filled with holes, and last year on more than one occasion I came back after track practice to my car being stuck in the ice in the gravel lot at Joliet West. Busing is also unreliable, so that's not another option. You can't have a job after school if you're taking the bus because it may not get you home, and you may not, if it does get you home, you may not get home until 6:30, 7. If you don't drive to school, it's very hard to have a job after school. I don't believe this board wants to perpetuate inequity between students, but at the moment, expensive parking passes are not making our situation any better. Because of this, I chose not to even apply for a parking permit this year. I know you hear my comments and will get back to me as soon as you can, but I hope you'll consider making real changes to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
No, ma'am.